I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today in this media briefing, we have Dr. James Bridgers, who is a Director for the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Assistant Chief of Public Health Services. And our guest today is Sarah Kogel-Smucker, who is a Climate Change Officer for the county. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Mr. County Executive, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. I guess it's a good afternoon. I haven't spent too much time looking at the news this morning. I might change opinion. Thanks for being here again. Dr. Stoddard is not able to attend the media briefing because he's currently meeting with DC Water and real estate federal officials at the White House to discuss the impacts and mitigation of the sewage spill from the Potomac Interceptor. Since the pipe broke, DC Water has been working tirelessly to repair the pipe and stop the sewage from contaminating the Potomac River. This is significant and a complex engineering challenge. Chemical corrosion of the pipe resulted in the pipe wall deteriorating. When the pipe collapsed, surrounding boulders fell into the pipe. The vast majority of the sewage is coming from Virginia, and the sewage was headed for the Blue Plains water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant in the district. Since this spill occurred last month, we've maintained a constant contact with DC Water, WSSC, and the Maryland Department of Environment. Our HHS team, including Sean O'Donnell and Dr. Ashford, along with the County Department of Environmental Protection, have been monitoring the situation for any potential health and environmental impacts on residents in the affected communities near the spill. And I appreciate their efforts to inform and educate our residents. The basic facts are the spill occurred on federal land, and the canal is included in federal land. The pipe is owned by DC Water. And DC Water does process waste for Virginia and Montgomery County in the district. The spill did not enter waters regulated by the county, but the spill is definitely in the Potomac River. The spill flowed across federal land directly into the Potomac River, and DC Water is monitoring bacteria levels daily at 6 locations. The DC Department of Energy and Environment is monitoring this weekly, and the county waterways and properties have not been affected. There are key points and advice we've communicated to our residents. There's no risk to the county drinking water. It is below the intake pipes for the county. Residents should avoid contact with water or shoreline in the impacted areas. Stay away. Keep children and pets away from the water's edge and ensure pets do not drink from the river. If exposure occurs, wash skin and hands immediately with soap and clean water. Pet owners should thoroughly rinse their pet's paws and fur. No one should be collecting or eating fish, shellfish, or any other wildlife from the river. And we need folks to stop flushing wipes or disposing of grease down drains. While many questions remain about how much will it cost to fix and how can we prevent this from happening again, DC Water's immediate priorities are to repair the break and mitigate the environmental impacts of the spill in our region and downstream in the Bay. It's unhelpful for Donald Trump to intervene and blame the governor more for an incident that his EPA is currently overseeing. While we expect the federal government to fulfill its responsibilities regarding this incident, our residents deserve accurate information about the facts surrounding this spill. And it's quite contradictory and hypocritical for the president to comment on this matter immediately after deregulating all the environmental protections in the country, basically saying no rules on clean air, no rules on clean water, and no assessment of environmental impacts on health. Does he actually really care, or is this just a nice little talking point for him? On Friday, the EPA announced the elimination of the 2009 greenhouse gas endangering finding, the legal bedrock that allowed government to regulate emissions from vehicles and power plants. The administration effectively neutralized federal authority to prescribe motor vehicle and engine emission standards to address global climate change. This action removes regulatory requirements to measure, report, or comply with federal greenhouse gas standards for cars less than 15 years old. These are massive changes, with approximately 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide expected to be reintroduced into the atmosphere. These new regulations have targeted scientific work used to justify climate protection. Rules now direct EPA to give less weight to studies if the underlying data, such as confidential medical records, is not publicly available. This is a direct blow to life-saving research. For decades, foundational studies like Harvard's 6 Cities studies linked air pollution to premature deaths using private medical histories. The EPA says that if data used to produce those studies was not public data, it invalidates the research. This is sadly the tip of the iceberg when it comes to weakening the body of scientific evidence that improves the quality of life of every community. Without information and data, it's nearly impossible to track and maintain quality standards, protect the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the land we depend on. When the EPA weakens these benchmarks, our local standards are automatically compromised. The only way to prevent this is through costly, resource-intensive research, which the county and state governments can't afford. I assure you, we're not helpless. Many of our residents understand how critical it is to follow our climate action plan. The good news is that most people aren't stupid. From general energy efficiency projects and the clean energy investments to electric vehicle adoption and enhanced flood response, we've made significant strides in reducing our climate impact and increasing our resilience. These achievements are a testament to what we can accomplish when we work together toward a sustainable future. As we move forward, we'll continue to build on this momentum, ensuring that we leave a positive legacy for future generations. We also enjoy support from the state, but many of the laws in place to protect us depend on federal standards. I want you to hear from the county's climate change officer, Sarah Kogel-Smucker, about this. Last month, she joined me as the county released the 2025 Annual Climate Action Plan report. It's sad to think, in spite of all our progress, the federal government is actually trying to drive us back to where we were before. I'll remind people that President Trump and his allies have actually talked about taking America back to pre-World War I. I don't know if you all can conceive of how incredibly stupid that is, but this is an era of child labor, lack of protection for labor in general, lack of protection for the environment, sort of like utter disregard for human life. And this is their idea of where the future lies. And it's kind of a sad commentary on the mentality of the president and the people who hang around him. But I'm going to stop and turn this over to our guest today. Hello.
Hi, thank you, County Executive. As you mentioned, I'm Sarah Kogel-Smucker, Climate Change Officer for the county. And I really want to underscore what the County Executive just said about the short-sighted and dangerous nature of EPA's actions last week. So as the County Executive said, EPA repealed its endangerment finding under the Clean Air Act. And to understand how dangerous and short-sighted that is, I want to briefly go back to 1970. And I want to go back to 1970 for 2 reasons. One, if you were alive in 1970 or the 70s, 80s, or if you've seen pictures or old movies of urban areas, you know that there was this thick smog covering our urban areas, interfering with people's day-to-day lives, getting on surfaces, left on skin in the summer, interfering with breathing when folks were just trying to go about their business in not just urban areas, but areas near industrial activity, near roadways. And so to address this, in 1970, a bipartisan Congress, with the support and guidance of President Nixon, passed the Clean Air Act amendments. And the Clean Air Act has been amended over the years, including under President H.W. Bush. But in broad brush, under the Clean Air Act, industries that have major contributions to air pollution have to use technology to reduce that pollution. And the Clean Air Act was written to be regularly updated by EPA as technology and science progressed. Now, it has been remarkably successful. So, for example, since 1990, fine particulate matter pollution, that's a deadly form of air pollution, has declined by 39%, and ozone pollution has declined by 18%. Cleaner air means a decline in environmentally related respiratory illnesses and other health problems. This in turn saves lives, saves health impacts, saves healthcare costs, and are boons to our quality of life and the American economy. So a 2020 report commissioned by the environmental organization NRDC found that the annual benefits of the Clean Air Act programs prevented 370,000 premature deaths a year. But you don't need that study. Again, you see it. If you've watched a movie in an urban area or been to an urban area or near an industrial activity, you know it's nothing like the 70s and 80s now. There's still air pollution. There's still a ways to go, but it is much cleaner and much healthier. So what does this have to do with climate change? Well, the Clean Air Act was written to be updated by EPA with regulation as science and technology evolved, as I mentioned. And in 2009, after a Supreme Court decision, the EPA found that greenhouse gas emissions, climate change pollution, are a pollutant that endanger public health and welfare under the Clean Air Act, and so should be regulated under the Clean Air Act like other forms of air pollution. And this was backed by a lot of excellent science and law, but we also know from our lived experience that, of course, greenhouse gas emissions endanger public health and welfare. We've experienced it with the extreme heat, the extreme storms, and other effects of climate change, and we know that it is going to get worse and needs to be addressed. Now, like other regulation of air pollution, regulating climate change pollution under the Clean Air Act would be remarkably successful. So, for example, a 2024 analysis conducted by the EPA showed that carbon pollution standards for power plants that were tightened under the Clean Air Act were predicted to deliver $480 billion in total climate and health benefits over the next 2 decades, more than 20 times the cost to industry. And a 2024 vehicle standards were estimated to result in $1.9 trillion in climate health benefits over the next 30 years. But fossil fuel companies didn't even want to have a part of their profits impacted by having to use this technology that still allows things to happen. It just makes them reduce pollution. And so the Trump administration, under urging from fossil fuel companies, has now found, proposed finding these regulations that climate change pollution is not an air pollutant that endangers public health or welfare. Now, they proposed these regulations and received approximately 572,000 comments, including comments by our own county executive, Elrich. And these comments are the brilliance of the science, the wisdom of elected officials, the lived experience of ordinary Americans, all putting before EPA, not every comment, but a ton of the comments putting before EPA what we know, that greenhouse gas emissions are pollutants that endanger public health or welfare. But EPA didn't need to read that record. They know it, and the Trump administration knows it. And there's no reason other than cynical political aims to just barrel ahead and find what we know to be true, not true, that it's not a pollutant that harms public health and welfare. But EPA went ahead and did that under the Trump administration. And so what does that mean? As the county executive said, it means that the federal government has lost its main tool to combat climate change. And there will be litigation, but we know that the federal government is going to, at best, lose precious years getting this pollution out of our air. And so we need to keep pressuring Congress to do the right thing on climate change, but we cannot wait for them. So as the county executive said, we have wonderful climate change champions in our Montgomery County state delegation in Annapolis. And it is legislative session. And there are things in the works that will help Maryland do even more to combat climate change. And you can contact your elected officials and ask what they're supporting to combat climate change and how you can support them in doing that. Your Maryland elected officials in the state. Here in Montgomery County, as the county executive said, we have a climate action plan. It's an excellent roadmap. We are unified and committed to rapidly implementing it, and we will continue to do that. But we're all going to need to do our part. We cannot rely on the federal government, and in your day-to-day life, look at what you can do to make less climate change pollution. And Montgomery County is here to help you. So we have a campaign, Climate Smart, that gives you easy everyday things you can do in your day-to-day life to make a difference, and county resources to help you do that. So go to montgomerycountymd.gov/climate smart and continue to make climate progress. We can't wait on the federal government. We won't wait. We're going to continue to do what's right to ensure public health and economic well-being going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. County Executive Sarah, we're going to take some questions right now related to EPA regulations, and I believe there might be some questions also pertaining to the DC water spill. Matt Gregory, you raised your hand regarding these topics. USA.
Yes.
USA 9.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Matt. Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon. Hey, thank you so much, County Executive Elbridge. One of the questions we've had throughout this entire process, and I know there's no number figure on this, but today when we talked to DC Water, they said this is going to be a shared cost, cleaning all this up, getting everything fixed among the utility users, breaking it down by the counties in Virginia as well as Montgomery County and DC. My question would be, how much do you know about sort of, I don't know how much you know, but I guess what is your perception of how will this affect Montgomery County utility rates, and then what kind of portion of this, how do you respond to DC Water saying that this will be put on to the ratepayers at some point?
Well, it is an organization that depends on rates. So if it has a cost it has to bear, which it's absolutely going to have, I don't know if they've got insurance for this kind of thing, but if they're not insured, then they're going to have costs. And if they're going to have costs, I would expect it to wind up on ratepayers unless the jurisdictions are able to fund it with, cash themselves, which only means that somebody else is paying for the cash. I mean, if I had to pay millions of dollars for something, it's coming from someplace. So there is no good solution to this. I'm more interested in learning about, what their plan had been, and how they, what's their approach to maintaining their pipes. I know when WSSC had a spate of breaks a couple of years ago, and they're always going to get breaks because the temperature can make things really difficult. WSSC went about putting in new surveillance so they could tell by the sounds inside the pipes when things might be likely to break. I don't know what DC Water did. This is a very big main. I don't know what their maintenance or the regular, what you call, study of the condition of the pipe is. But I certainly hope that this leads to a full explanation. Actually, I'd say full investigation, not like you're looking for something criminal, but just a full investigation. And what did you do, and what did you know, and what could we have done differently at DC Water so they would have known this was going to be in danger before it happened.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Members of the media, any additional questions regarding these two topics? EPA regulations, DC water spill. No more questions? Okay, Mr. County Executive, we can move forward with other topics. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us today.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to talk briefly about the death of a 6-year-old in Montgomery Village. A 6-year-old, I think you all know, died from a apparently self-inflicted gunshot wound. This is unimaginable kind of tragedy, and it's every parent's worst nightmare. And our deepest condolences go out to the family and friends of this young boy. While the Montgomery County Police Department's determined there was no foul play, questions understandably arise about how a 6-year-old gained access to a loaded gun. Somebody was not responsible, because I'm pretty sure the kid didn't load the gun himself. Gun violence and harm it causes are a significant public health issue. And the 2023 CDC report on firearms death among children found that unintentional injury is the 4th leading cause of death among infants and the top cause of death among children and adolescents between the ages of 1 and 17. And firearms involved in unintentional injury deaths were stored loaded 74% of the time and unlocked 76% of the cases. That these are the most commonly discovered next to nightstands or near a bed, while adults have the right to own guns, it's crucial for every parent or person who owns firearms to ensure that young people do not have access to them. Guns are supposed to be in a gun safe or a lockbox. Utilize gun locks, store ammunition separately, control access to keys and combinations, and never leave a gun unattended. Talk to all family members, especially children, about gun safety and ask about the presence of unlocked firearms in the homes where your children play. And if a household member is experiencing depression, suicidal thoughts, or substance abuse, the safest option is to temporarily remove firearms from the home and store them elsewhere. Safe gun handling includes treating every gun as if it's loaded and keeping all fingers away from the trigger until it's time to actually shoot. So this is a tragedy that didn't have to happen. There's no reason for a loaded gun to be lying around. And I just feel bad for the family and, like I said, for the friends. And this is, a painful reminder to everybody that these accidents do happen, and they are so easily preventable that we've got to make sure we don't do anything that facilitates them happening. Moving on, I want to talk a little bit about where we're moving forward on the current incinerator and what we'd like to do with our trash in Montgomery County. And I think we could benefit from the engagement of the community to discuss this. And we're inviting the public to join me at the Up County Regional Service Center in Germantown on Monday, March 2nd, or here at the Leggett Office Building in Rockville on Wednesday, March 4th. Both events will start at 6. A third virtual meeting will be held at the same time on Thursday, March 5th. I hope it generates a lot of good discussion on how we can sensibly handle our waste management challenges. My goal for years, shared by many people, has been to shut down the incinerator that burns our trash. Burning our trash does not align with county goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and the incinerator is not clean. The problem is that the hauling the trash away is expensive. At the same time, the current incinerator is failing. It's outmoded and needs major renovations. And if we commit to this as a long-term solution, then we are going to face enormous costs for the upgrading or replacing the incinerator with a modern facility. So no matter what path we choose, there are going to be costs involved. It is not like we can leave this alone and have no additional costs. The costs will be very large. And if we make decisions to change, then our costs are going to be significant as well. One way to save on waste hauling costs is to reduce the volume of trash we haul away. And that's why I've been modernizing our solid waste management system through a process that's robust, independent, and data-driven. I just want to put this out directly to people is, solid waste is dealt with by the ton. And the amount of stuff we have to process and then send to the incinerator, or that we're going to wind up sending to long haul. And by the way, the incinerator sends 30% of our waste by train to a landfill. So there's no avoiding that either. But the point is that you and I actually control how much goes into the incinerator, how much goes to a landfill. The county is able to recycle your plastics, your paper, your glass, and your metal. There are very few plastics now that we can't touch. There are places now that are collecting plastic films because plastic films are now recyclable. So virtually everything that we're putting in our trash doesn't need to be there. The things that are hardest to recycle are dirty paper and things that are laminate, something that has paper and plastic laminated to it. But pretty much everything else that's in our waste stream, we can recycle. And we've got to figure out how we do more of that. You could look at it this way. The more each of us puts into recycling and the less that winds up going to a landfill, an incinerator, or some other process of disposing of it, the less it's going to cost us. So this is one thing that we have some control over the cost of. So hopefully, as we go through this and educate people, people understand not only do we need to do something, but that what we do is in large part a measure of what you do. And so I would encourage people to think about this. The county generates about 1.5 million tons of waste per year. The Comprehensive Solid Waste Management Plan estimates that yearly total grows by about 9% will grow about 9% over the next 8 years. despite the expanding recycling efforts. We're saving durable medical equipment now, mattresses, textiles, wood, bulk plastics, and more from the trash and turning some items into revenue for the county. But the trash keeps growing. These meetings are important, and I hope you'll help us get the word out about the events. Come and learn a little bit about our choices, learn about what you can do to help us come to better choices, and whatever choice we make sure that it is the least impactful, because we control how impactful our choices are. Last night, I should say, was the first night of Ramadan. Ramadan is a sacred month of fasting, prayer, and charity and reflection. In the Muslim community, from dawn to sunset, many Muslims abstain from food and drink as an act of spiritual discipline and gratitude. Each evening, families and friends gather for iftar, the meal that breaks the fast. There are more than 30,000 Muslims in Montgomery County, making it the fourth largest Muslim population in the U.S. The county is home to at least 12 mosques that represent various nationalities and ethnicities. As a county government, we remain committed to ensuring that all residents can practice their faith freely and safely. We maintain close relationships with community leaders, and law enforcement remains attentive to protecting houses of worship, all houses of worship. Ramadan's a time centered on patience, compassion, and generosity. These values resonate well beyond any single faith tradition. Montgomery County works because we respect one another's traditions. And I think we recognize that we share more than we differ on. We learn from one another, and we make a space for every community to celebrate, reflect, and practice freely. That is what we are. This is only a week and a half left in February, and meaning the chance is running out to take advantage of some of the special ceremonies and activities that are being tied to Black History Month throughout Montgomery County. Over the past few weeks, our weekly newsletter, Montgomery Update, has featured information about book clubs, concerts, family days at places like Woodlawn Manor Cultural Park in Sandy Spring. And there's still more to come. Black History Month Family Day on Saturday, the 28th, at the Josiah Henson Museum and Park in North Bethesda, featuring educational activities tied to the Underground Railroad. We have Wood and Wine at Oakley Cabin. It's also going to be on Saturday, the 28th, in Alney. Montgomery Parks is behind the event for adults 21 and older that will allow participants to get hands-on with an art project. Families can still take advantage of the month-long family-friendly celebration of Black innovation and change at the Kid Museum in Bethesda. And in Germantown, the Black Rock Center for the Arts is hosting a documentary about Washington Rebels Jubilee Voices on Saturday, February 28th, starting at 7 p.m. And I hope we continue to shine the spotlight on these events, and you have the opportunity to take advantage of visiting some of them. I want to make a little note about the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Last week, I used the meeting briefing to talk about two local civil rights icons. This week, we lost a national figure in advancing equality. Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson, helped widen the doors of opportunity in America. Reverend Jackson's work in the civil rights movement and his historic campaign for president challenged the system that too often excluded people from power. By building the broad multiracial Rainbow Coalition, he helped redefine who gets to participate and who gets heard. I was a member of the Rainbow Coalition back in the old days, and I'm grateful for the people I met and the work we did in Montgomery County. Reverend Jackson's life reminds us of the real change requires courage and the consistent willingness to stand up and to speak out and to bring people together, even when the costs are high and the politics are hard. And I'm proud to continue this work here at home, protecting voting rights, fighting for economic fairness, making sure every resident has a voice and a real opportunity to succeed. He lived a life that changed this country in ways that continue to shape our communities today, and our thoughts are with his family and all those who carry his legacy forward. I just want to add that, while people are trying to carry his legacy forward, the president is once again totally trying to destroy his legacy and the legacy of everyone who worked for equal rights for minorities and equal rights for women. I heard an EEOC greeting the other day from the web. And what it basically does, it solicits white males to file cases of discrimination against their employers or other people, where they work or where they live, if white men have been discriminated against. Not black people, not minorities, and interestingly, not white women, because Trump and his friends' hatred just doesn't extend to minorities, it extends to women as well. They have no problem being not only racist, but being misogynist. And it's kind of disturbing. I never thought I'd go to a website and hear a solicitation for white people to talk about how oppressed they are, with no regard for the history of what's happened to minorities and women in this country since the creation of the country. That's a long time to be discriminating against people, and for Trump and his minions to single out the plight of poor white men is pathetic, but it's also evil, and I think it's worth a note. Before we open this up to questions, I'd like to give my staff an opportunity to provide any updates they want to share, and I will start again with our health team.
Good afternoon, Mr. County Executive. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update. I have no specific updates from the Director's Office, but I will turn it over to Sean O'Donnell now for his public health update, and I'm available to answer any questions. Sean?
Thank you, Dr. Bridgers. No respiratory virus updates. Things have improved on that front. And just to remind our Montgomery County residents, our public health advisory to avoid contact with the Potomac River from the point of the spill and downstream along Montgomery County remains in effect. And that's not only for individuals, but please keep your pets away from the water. If you do come in contact, please wash anything that was exposed to the water with soap and water, decontaminate. And if anyone who did have a contact has any symptoms of GI or health distress, please contact your healthcare provider. You can also contact the health department, and we will follow up with you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, members of the media. Any additional questions for the county executive this afternoon and health officials? No more questions today? Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Stay safe, have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.